Your imagination is quite often all the preparation you need for a role. Because my imagination is so active, I can see myself going on forever. I can see myself, if I keep my health, acting until I'm in my 90s. On the one hand, I do have that optimism. On the other hand, it's not being pessimistic, but it's having an overactive imagination to imagine that it could all evaporate tomorrow. Suddenly I stop getting work and I can just sort of be grateful I got what I got.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Jacki Weaver is an actor. She sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you begin your preparation process for a role?
My process, my MO usually varies from job to job, depending on the script, depending on the other actors, depending on the director. I'm highly instinctive, but I also go through some routine stuff that I've been doing since drama school way back in the 1960s. Yes. And that's the usual stuff about the backstory of the character. I don't think, I have strong feelings about backstory. I don't think it's always the place for the audience to know it. I think it's something that informs the actor and his process.
Yes.
Wait,
can we just talk about that for real quick? Because I don't want to forget this. Do you fill in the backstory yourself if you don't get it?
That varies. Sometimes a writer will give you all of the backstory. Yeah. Other times you're left to your own devices. I like to confer with the director and the writer what they think about the backstory I've come up with. But I'm a huge believer in the imagination of the audience. I think that they must work. The audience or the viewer, they must, not forced, but they must be encouraged to make their own decisions. If they want everything explained, they should go and watch a soap opera. I've got nothing against soap operas, but they explain every last thing down to the very last detail. And some people need that, but to me the best storytelling is that which engages your imagination, so that there could be any number of reasons, motivations, outlooks. So, I do a backstory, and also the stuff you learn at drama school, what this person did last year, what they did yesterday, what do other people think about this person, what do they say about this person in the text.
And this is all
routine
written down.
Stuff.
Are you writing all this down?
I have little books I write in. Yes.
Yeah.
All of that. Sometimes, certainly if I've got lengthy monologues, I will write them down myself. And as I get to know them, I will write them down from my memory. I find that it helps to get them into your own soul if you're writing them with your own hand. But I'm very loose and open. I'm happy to go with any kind of process that a director and other actors want to do. I'm happy to do homework with other actors. Because I'm sort of theatre-based, I've done 73 plays as opposed to 53 films. I love a rehearsal process, but you have to get used to no rehearsal in movies and television. And I think it's very good for your brain process to have to be that much on the ball, especially if you're doing something that is pushed for time and you mightn't even get more than one take. So you've got to, it's like going on stage, you've got to come up with the goods straight away.
And is that something that you really just think of as a thing you've adjusted to? But it sounds like you've made it like where it's a plus for you, meaning like there's an advantage to it because you have to think on your feet really fast.
Because of the immediacy. Well, it helps if you're good at improv and if you've done improv. I did at drama school, did a bit of improv, and I think that really helps you with the immediacy of no rehearsal.
Yeah.
But it's a different skill. It is a skill. Some people are not as good at. Some people are brilliant at it. Some are not.
Yeah.
Some people want time to brood and think and analyze and rehearse, and so everyone's process seems to differ a lot. I think I just generally cope with, and there's a big difference between doing something that's been thoroughly rehearsed to doing something that you haven't rehearsed at all. Even if you're going from what's been written and not improvising. I think it's just that I'm so experienced now that I cope with it.
Yeah.
I've seen it rattle actors, really good actors.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think it's unfair to force a certain way of doing things onto actors who aren't used to it and aren't necessarily going to do their best work. Because what we want for everyone is for them to produce their best work.
Yes.
A well-rounded character who's telling the story in the way it should be told.
Yes. And so do you think the director should adjust knowing that they see that person isn't functioning at full capacity in the way that's happening? Like, for instance, in that example where there's no rehearsal and you see, like, should the director adjust? Or, like, it seems like the actors always have to be the ones who adjust.
Well, you could argue that's our job.
Yeah.
You could say, well,
I
that's
guess.
your job, kiddo. I do think some directors can be a little cruel and lacking in understanding. Some directors are quite cruel. Most directors are lovely.
Yeah.
Nobody sets out to make people miserable. Yeah. Well, no, maybe some do. Maybe some do. There are some cruel people in the world.
Yeah.
But I've mostly worked with really, really lovely directors. Quite often in a theatre situation, you will get a director who picks a whipping boy, and that can happen in television and film too. Mm-hmm. And one particular person can't seem to do anything right, and it's heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm always so relieved it's not me that's the one.
I heard you say that you have this respect for the text, I think you call it, you know. I'm imagining that comes from the theatre. I mean, the theatre you have to have.
I love writers, and I've worked with I've done a lot of the classics, and I've done a lot of contemporary plays written by brilliant writers. And I've had close friends who are writers. I know how they agonize over the tiniest word and for hours over one word and one comma, and then to have an actor ride roughshod over it and paraphrase, and I think must be heartbreaking. Well, I know it is for some writers. And so I always try to respect what's been written. And if I have the slightest question, I will refer it to the dramaturg or the director, and hope if he's there, if he's available, the writer. So yes, that's made me very mindful when I'm on a set doing something that's just been written, to try and do exactly what he's written. And then some directors will, especially if they're auteur directors, they will get you to do a couple of takes as written, and then they will give you the leeway to improvise,
and
to riff on the thing, and it's that can have some excellent results. Well, Perpetual Grace, which is what's on air now that I did. Yes, I love the dialogue that they write. Steve Conrad and Bruce Terrace. It's just wonderful dialogue. It's very original, slightly odd in places. eccentric. It's a joy to speak. You know, you get your script and you can't wait to say it. It's that good. But there was, we were up to about episode 4, and there was a phrase that I couldn't quite make sense of, and I felt it might be better just slightly turned around. So I emailed the writer, and he wrote back and said, "Thank you so much for this. Of course you can do that. But I want to thank you for asking me first."
Yeah.
But on that same note, I did a Woody Allen film a few years ago called Magic in the Moonlight, and he said to me, "Now, if there's anything in the script that you feel you want to rephrase or different word, just feel free." And I thought, it's Woody Allen, one of the greatest screenwriters of all time.
Yeah.
This script is perfect. There's no way I'm going to paraphrase this.
And I want to talk to you about that Woody Allen audition, which I don't even know if you can be called an audition, the way you described it. And then you also described this almost polar opposite first meeting with David O. Russell, which was about 17 times as long as the meeting with Woody Allen.
Yes.
Can you just tell the story of Woody Allen going to his
Sure.
I guess it's his apartment or his office or something?
Yes, it was where he I think it's where he edits, but it was an apartment there, but it was all work stuff, and it was somewhere in Park Avenue. And I was in New York on my way to Puerto Rico to do a movie. And I got a call from my agent saying, "Woody wants to see you." I couldn't believe it. I almost screamed with delight. I think I was staying at the Algonquin, one of my favorite hotels. And and it was the next morning, and I turned up, and the guys at the door, it's beautiful, beautiful building, one of those Park Avenue resident buildings. And he said, "Yes, it's that apartment there, you're expected." Knocked on the door, and a nice young woman answered and said, "Yes, he's expecting you, come in." He said, "Oh, and my agent has said Woody never asks you to read. He just likes to talk to people."
Is that right?
And I said, "Well, you know, I'll audition for him for hours if he wants.
Right.
I've seen everything he's done, and I love his films." And he came out and he said, "How do you do?" He said, "Now, I've got a couple of scenes here, and I want you to read them." And I said, "Oh, you want me to read? I'm happy to do that." He said, No, I don't want you to read them to me. I want you to go in that room and read the scenes, and I want you to see if you like them. And then I want you to come and tell me if you like them. And if you don't like them, I want you to be absolutely honest. If you hate them, you just say, "No, I don't like this." And he said, "And that'll be fine. I'll find another project you can do with me." That's all he said. So I went in the room and I read these 2 scenes, and there were several women in them, and he hadn't said who he wanted me to play.
Oh.
And they were hilarious, and they were classic Woody Allen dialogue.
Yeah.
And,
so you really did love it. I mean, it wasn't.
I honestly loved it.
Yeah.
And I came out and I said to the young woman, "I've read the scenes." And she went in there. I think he was editing something, and he said, "She's read them already?" And she said, "Yes." And he came out and he said, "Well, what do you think? Did you hate it?" I said, "I love it. I'd like to play all of those women." He said, "Well, you can't. You can only play that one." He said, "All right, I'll see you. We'll see you when we start filming."
And that's it.
And I think I floated along Park Avenue. I couldn't believe it, and the 2 big burly doormen said, "How'd you go?" And I said, "I got the job." "Yes," they said. It was magic. Magic.
So funny.
And then I went and saw my oldest New York friend, who I got to know back in the 70s. He used to work in the theatre, and he directed me in a musical. They're Playing Our Song. I did 600 performances of that in Sydney. Philip Cusack, God bless him. Yeah, I called Philip straight away, and he said, "I think we got to go to a bar." It's so exciting.
Yeah. And then David O. Russell has you come down to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
For before Silver Linings Playbook, And you were doing Uncle Vanya at the time.
Yes.
And the way you say it, you barely got back in time.
I think
for
we
the
got
show.
there about a 15-minute call, 10 minutes before curtain.
And he just had you do improvs? Is this what it was?
Yeah, he had me do a lot of improv and see if I could maintain my American accent while I was improvising, because that's when it's difficult.
So that sounds like it wasn't just an extravagant. I mean, like him needing to know that is not that crazy.
And because he's one of those directors, because he writes his stuff, he likes to have you do it as written and then to do it improv. And sometimes the takes are 15 minutes long and it's lit 360 degrees so the camera moves all around the room with you. And sometimes the takes go for 15 minutes. And so I think he wanted to make sure I was loose enough to go along with it.
Yeah. But did you like him? Did you like him right away?
I loved him straight away.
Yeah.
He's a unique personality, most unusual chap.
Yeah.
Very affectionate, very sweet, bit eccentric in a really lovely way. I love him. My heart's full just thinking about him. I think he's
really
fantastic. Nice. I also had to, apart from drive to Philly, I had to do a FaceTime with him at a studio here in New York.
So he didn't give you the role after that?
No, not straight away.
Holy smokes.
No, he wanted to talk to me again.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know this, but it could have been he had to convince someone else, perhaps on the production team.
Okay.
Because, an Australian woman to play.
Right. And he didn't need to put you with Robert De Niro to see a test like that.
I didn't meet Robert De Niro till we started.
Yeah. And so, speaking of directors, what is it that you need ideally on a set from a director? I heard an actor say, I think it was Jeff Daniels, if it's more than 5 words direction, it's too much. Sure. And I thought, that scared me. Sometimes I want to talk. I'm already talking too much with the director. An actor.
I'm kind of tolerant. I sometimes though they will explain something in 100 words when all they need to say is put the cup down before you say the line. Yeah. That's oversimplifying it. But sometimes they go into an enormous explanation that can be quite poetic and interesting when all they want you to do is do the line more loudly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll say, without being cheeky, you mean you want it softer? Yes! You just have to say so. Yeah. But some actors don't like that.
Right, I was just going to say,
some actors don't like that.
That would be considered bad direction for some people.
I think I'm just so tolerant because I'm so old and experienced. I really do.
Or is it because you've dealt with so much bad direction that you can... Is that
I don't know. I'm never sure when people say, oh, that was badly directed. I'm never sure that you can be sure it was badly directed. A director friend of mine used to say a lot of good directing's in the casting. Yes. You be so careful about how you cast. I'm going back to Perpetual Grace because that's my most recent experience and it was such a wonderful one. 5 months of absolute harmony. He runs a set that is so calm and gentle and generous. And you get the best work out of everybody. We were working under difficult conditions, in the desert.
Just weather-wise, or
it was very cold. It was Santa Fe in winter, 5 months of it. Sometimes dust storms with the whole crew head to toe covered, and it wasn't easy. But because there was trust again, and admiration and consideration, and no temperament.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I'm not saying this for a fact, but I think he chooses people to work with who are not temperamental, who are not known for being difficult. It has no place. It doesn't help anybody.
Right. Right, I believe that.
Keep your securities at home in your toilet. Insecurities, I meant.
Yes. You've said many times in interviews that you have nothing bad to say about America, except that we drive on the wrong side of the road, something like that. You've said good things, mainly. But I want to know, because you spent so long in the Australian industry of theater, movies, and then you come here to America and deal with this wave from Animal Kingdom and, meetings probably everywhere. I basically want, from an actor's point of view, an assessment of these industries, because you've spent time in both of them now.
Yeah.
And like, is there a real, or is there no difference?
If you're looking for a difference, I honestly can only say that America is 330 million people, and the film industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's largely why California is the 6th biggest economy in the world. And so everything's on a much bigger scale, of course. Australia, in comparison with only 25 million people, 1/15 the size of America, is we make very good films, and we have great film crews, so good that a lot of American productions go over there to film, in much the way that as they go to Canada, for instance. But in the size, ours is a cottage industry, which doesn't mean it's lacking in quality. It's just of necessity, not as big, doesn't have as big an audience, but it's still an excellent and strong, very high standard industry. And that's the only difference I honestly can see. I have this, I go through the same, meeting people, the same process. I'm very well known in Australia, of course, so I just get, but nowadays here, I just get offered jobs sight unseen. Not even a coffee. The days of meeting in the bar at the Sunset Tower, they seem to have gone, sadly. So one thing I will say is that I love film crews. I adore film crews. I've already said I love writers, but I love film crews too. Always get a crush on someone in the camera department, whatever the age. They are the most hard-working people. They're wonderful. I mean, you get the odd bad apple, but that's very, very rare. And they are so similar all over the world. Australian film crews, a lot of them could get a job like that in America if the circumstances were right, because the standards are great. I will say French film crews take a longer lunch break because it's French food they're getting, and they have a glass of wine at lunch, which you don't do in America or Australia. In Australia, they wouldn't be going back after lunch. But yeah, am I getting into the area you're asking about?
Well, yeah, and I guess I wanted to know, like, even before this period where you've had success, but I guess you don't know what it's like to really come up in the American industry.
My situation's unique. I know there are lots of young Australians who are hoping to hit the big time in America, and they come out here every pilot season to try and get a job in a pilot, and some of them don't and keep coming year after year. Some of them do and get a great job and then don't get another one. Some of them do and never look back and keep working. There's an awful lot of luck involved. Of course, you've got to be hardworking and determined, but see, that didn't happen to me. I can't even think of anyone else that's happened to that. At the age of 63, they were suddenly embraced by the industry here. It is amazing. And there are women my age that are just as good, if not better, actors than I am in Australia. And it just was me that happened to be cast in Animal Kingdom.
Now that you've been a part of the American film industry now for 10 years, right? I mean, been here, and do you have an optimistic view of your future in this as an artist? Like, I'm talking to the inner actor in you that is still going to be doing great things. Like, do you see that inner actor fully spreading her wings in this business?
I do, but because I have such an active imagination, which is part of, I always say that's your best research, going back to process, that your imagination is quite often all the preparation you need for a role. Because my imagination is so active, I can see myself going on forever. I can see myself, if I keep my health, acting until I'm in my 90s. I've always had a baby face. I mean, I think I look 72, but some days with a bit of help I can look 10, 15 years younger, right lighting. So I've always thought a good actor should be able to play 10, 15 years younger, 10, 15 years older. It helps to play younger roles because you've been through the experience of being that age and so on. Why quite often 14-year-old Juliet is very well played by a 34-year-old actress. So yeah, on the one hand, I do have that optimism. On the other hand, it's not being pessimistic, but it's having an overactive imagination to imagine that it could all evaporate tomorrow. Suddenly I stopped getting work, and I can just sort of be grateful I got what I got. Yeah. So I'm prepared for both eventualities, really.
And maybe that's a good, healthy thing. That could be part of your tool as an actor.
Maybe it'll stop me being neurotic. Neurotic, the definition of that being worrying about something you can do nothing about.
Yes. Jacki Weaver, thank you.
Thank you, Peter. It was lovely.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.